Welcome back. A new Bloomberg News and Morning Consult poll shows former President Trump leading President Biden 47% to 42% in a potential Election Day matchup across swing states. But perhaps even more worrying for the Biden campaign, 6 of those swing states were ones that Biden won in 2020. So let's take a closer look here. Trump is leading President Biden by 4 points in Arizona, 2 points in Pennsylvania, and a whopping 7 points in Georgia, states that were crucial to Biden's 2020 victory. The Midwest is in play as well, with Trump up 4 points in Michigan and Wisconsin. The former president is also up 3 in Nevada. I'm joined now by today's panel, Politico congressional correspondent Olivia Beavers, Navin Nayak, president and executive director of the Center for American Progress Action Fund, and Pete Seat, former White House deputy press secretary during the George Bush administration and current Republican strategist. Thanks to all of you for being here. Great to have you. I have to start with you, yes. Olivia. Look at those polls. I mean, look, we are less than a year out. Mm-hmm. You just had Congressman Dean Phillips sitting where you are, making the case that there is room for him, given these poll numbers. He kept going back to these poll numbers. How much concern is there inside Democratic ranks with whom you speak with about these poll numbers?
I mean, I think Democrats are quite concerned, and this poll is adding on top of a bunch of polls that we've seen, compounding the problem, which is showing that, voters are basically saying, we might not support you and might not give you, might flip for Donald Trump. Yeah. And that is definitely concerning them. There's concerns about how Biden has set up his operations in some of these early states as well, and whether he's been working hard enough. Dean Phillips, I thought it was really interesting. He kept on saying, because of his poll numbers, I'm in. But we're about to sort of see, does that really pull in other people? Because for a long time, we were also seeing polls that suggested they didn't want another matchup of Trump. They didn't want another matchup of Biden, and yet those are two the leading candidates.
Yeah, it's such a great point that you raised there, Olivia. Navin, let me get you to weigh in here. I was just in the Rust Belt, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Ohio, and what I kept hearing over and over again was not the concern amongst Democrats that their voters would necessarily vote for Trump, but that they would stay home, that there is an enthusiasm gap. As Olivia's reporting shows, they're not as organized as Democrats think they should be in some of these critical places.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think it's a year out. So the first thing I would say on the polls is, it's amazing to me. Remember, a year ago, there was going to be a red wave. And those were polls weeks before the election. There was going to be a red wave. It didn't happen. So we're over-indexed on polls a year out. And the other thing I'd say, if we want to get into the polls, in none of these polls is Trump ahead of where he was in 2020. So he's basically at the exact same number, 46 in Michigan, 49 in Georgia. Those are all what he got 5 years ago. He's not made any grounds to this point. And I think the more important point is there is no enthusiasm on their side. You're not seeing this huge turnout for crowds. It's actually pretty astounding how little energy there is for a party that's out of power, that's in a primary. No question, I think there's a lot of work to do on the Democratic side to actually get people re-energized, to get people re-engaged. There's a year, the campaign is just getting going. So I am definitely not in the camp of the Democrats that are freaking out, but I appreciate if you pay attention to the polls, you can get sort of misled.
Pete, what's happening inside the Republican Party is so fascinating, because here you have obviously a major opening with these poll numbers, and yet there's a lot of division over whether Republicans want to see former President Trump as the nominee. And boy, if you look at his polling in the primary, it sure looks like he is the commanding frontrunner as we get close to Iowa.
Yeah, he's being treated by the electorate as an incumbent.
Yes,
I mean,
exactly.
Look at these numbers. They're absolutely astounding. And, even if Ron DeSantis pulls off Iowa, it doesn't matter. Ask Mike Huckabee and Ted Cruz and Rick Santorum. For them, it was Iowa and bust, not Iowa or bust. It was over after that. That's all they got. I would say we'll all agree that it's very early when it comes to polling. Voters at this stage are very cranky, and they'll eventually come around. But what's over all of this is economic anxiety. People don't look at the GDP growth and say, yeah, things are moving in the right direction. They feel the pain at the gas station and with their groceries, and that's being reflected in these numbers.
I'm glad you bring up the economy, because it's such a fascinating moment as we track what's happening with the economy. Here you have inflation coming down, the Fed deciding not to raise interest rates, Olivia, and yet As I traveled through the Rust Belt, I talked to voters who said, great, but we don't feel that in our pockets. We don't feel that when we go to the grocery store. It's still not translating.
And that's a big problem for Joe Biden, who tied the health of the economy onto his name. And so you're seeing polling that suggests that Bidenomics is not polling particularly well, and it must be very frustrating for him. There's also, dropping unemployment as well. But how do you go around saying, look, we're delivering for you, and you're not feeling it? That optimism gap is hard to patch, but the economy and sentiments like that also move slowly. So like we were talking about earlier, if he's able to sort of shift that within the next year, he might be in a much better position.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. And Navin, we've actually seen the president pull away from using the term Bidenomics because he doesn't want to necessarily be tied so closely with that, and instead try a slightly different message of trying to show people that he relates to what they're going through. Is that working? And what do you think his biggest headwinds are, particularly coming off of a week where he now faces a formal impeachment inquiry?
Well, I think for the economy first, I think it was a really good week for American people. Like, the data came out last Friday, the Michigan Consumer Sentiment Index, and that is, again, a poll of how consumers are feeling. It was the highest point in 2 years, and it is trending in the right direction. I think that's one thing to keep track of more than polls. It is, again, consumers saying how they actually feel. And if that keeps going up, inflation numbers came down again, Fed news. And then you also, I think there are a lot of reporting this week that Biden could be presiding over a bull economy next year. That's one important point. The second is what I think the president's been doing, which is really focusing pretty precisely on costs. This is the risk that Republicans run, which is they are hoping the economy is bad. They're not actually offering any solutions other than tax cuts for the wealthy. And so Biden is out there talking about junk fees, talking about lower costs for prescription drugs today. And he's really honed in on what he is doing, not what he's only done, but what more he wants to get done. And I think that's where he's got to be.
Pete, let me turn to you and get you to weigh in on this impeachment inquiry, because Republicans have said that they have not established a link between Hunter Biden and President Biden's business dealings. How much concern is there inside the Republican Party that this could actually embolden President Biden? Look at what it did to former President Clinton. Look at what it did to former President Trump and his 2 impeachments, when actually their poll numbers went up.
Well, if there isn't concern, there should be. They've not made the case that this is in the public interest. Now, what is behind this, I think, is something a little more personal and a little political. The personal is, I'll just call it what it is, and that's retribution. And I know that word's been thrown out a lot lately, but Republicans, members of Congress, are reflecting their voters who are angry over 2 impeachments of Donald Trump, and now it's time for a little payback. The political side is hoping that this cloud of whataboutism is hanging over Joe Biden throughout 2024 so that it levels the playing field and kind of cancels out whatever's happening with Donald Trump. What I worry about is that they've boxed themselves into a corner, because if they don't find evidence and they don't get to impeachment or don't have the votes for impeachment, how do you message that? Best of luck.
Well, and you're so right, because I interviewed Governor Ron DeSantis, who said he supported the impeachment inquiry, but he also, Olivia, made the point that his concern is it makes it look like Republicans are not solely focused on the issues that Americans care about. So there's that concern kind of swirling within the Republican ranks. How much pressure is there on Democrats, on Republicans, to get something done on this supplemental aid package?
I mean, I think, well, it doesn't fit for the supplemental aid package, but if you keep replaying that Chip Roy quote, I want one thing that I can go home and deliver. But as for the supplemental, we're hearing that there's progress being made. So the Senate was supposed to basically go on recess, but their negotiators are now going to be working throughout the weekend, and they're calling senators back, and they're hoping that they can, hopefully they don't think before Christmas, but hoping before the end of the year to nail something down. But there's a lot of hiccups to sort of watch for. One is when they do actually put pen to paper and have a text, that's when things go public and they start getting ripped apart. And then the constituents start calling and members start getting, a little bit more uncomfortable about whether they're going to support it. And then you also have to worry about what's going to happen in the House with Speaker Mike Johnson, who has been very clear about what he wants in border that doesn't really fit with the Senate.
Yeah, still a lot to be worked out. Great conversation. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Olivia, Navin, and Pete. Still to come, Rudy Giuliani on trial. We're following new legal developments for Trump's former lawyer and confidant and his efforts to overturn the 2020 election. Stay with us. You're watching Meet the Press now.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.